I'm a PhD candidate, and I look at what I've labelled compensatory consequences in intimate partner violence. And I'm looking at the recovery of victims. And I look at male and female victims, which strangely enough is not strange in this room, it's quite controversial. So, if I can... Bottom button. There we go. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what my theories are. What are compensatory consequences from trauma? A study I've just completed regarding compensatory consequences in IPV, and then looking at some of the solutions that I'll be working with Liz on. Because incidentally, there's the three sort of women in this room that are looking at intimate partner violence and abuse in men, all live in Cumbria. So I think we could be called the Cumbrian witches or something. Start our own coven. So I was sat with a friend of mine a couple of years ago in the days following the Manchester Arena bomb. And we had the radio on in the background, and there was a news report saying that all the incidents that had happened and all the poor people that had lost their lives and the devastation of the families. And because of that, they were going to send in some psychologists. And at that moment, my friend turned to me and said, "Shit, they're sending your lot in. It must be serious." And it kind of hit me that psychologists, although we kind of see ourselves as healers, we could very well be the harbingers of doom, because there's an idea that when we walk in the room, you should be traumatized. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're very good at investigating bad news and issues, but rarely, if ever, do we study success. Now, compensatory consequences of trauma was a title that came up with the supervisory team, because this is a relatively new area. It's only in the past couple of decades that we've started to really investigate positive adaption. And one of the things that terrifies me in this field is that often the theories and information that we put out there, especially in areas such as the British Psychological Society and the DSM, can often be used in the forensic setting, particularly in courts when we're looking at victims of intimate partner violence. And I did not want a barrister saying to any victim of domestic abuse, "But you have positive adaption from this," and use it as something that could diminish their experience and the outcome for the perpetrator. So compensatory consequences brings a lot of disjointed language together in this field, and essentially it says you have received compensation from yourself from the struggle that you had to go through from the trauma you have experienced. So this is not about someone else offering you the opportunity to grow. This is about something that you have been entered into involuntary, and you have had to adapt psychologically from this. So there's a lot of interest in various areas of trauma, and reports show that although 50% of adults say that they've experienced some kind of trauma, and I think everyone in this room will have gone through something that could be potentially traumatic, whether it is bereavement or loss of a job or going through a divorce, whatever that is. But only 7% experience PTSD. So there seems to be this idea that if it isn't just a smooth path from trauma to devastation, which is where we tend to put trauma victims. And also, there's in studies of trauma and reviews, there's been findings that say that the higher the perceived threat to your life or your existence within life, the more opportunity there is for you to reassess and adapt positively. Trauma survivors do demonstrate compensatory consequences. And I'm talking of trauma from natural disaster, terrorism, disease, HIV, cancer, and military combat. We've seen victims of these types of trauma show greater resilience, increased self-belief, and a higher appreciation of the things that are important in life. We've all read in the news stories of people that have survived cancer, quit their job, bought a boat and sailed single-handedly around the world because that's what they've always wanted to do. That's not a rarity. Maybe the rarity is sailing around the world single-handedly, but people do recover. We're here as a species. We do adapt. And compensatory consequences may promote growth by encouraging reappraisal, which is what I've just said about having a look at your life and thinking, actually, I don't like what I'm doing or who I am. I'm going to change things. So I had a look at this in intimate partner violence, and there was not very much out there. I scoured every database, every bit of grey data, everything I could find, and ultimately it was all about how bad it was for victims of intimate partner violence. And a lot of that is based on the political idea behind it. So my belief, and evidence backs up, it's also in the chapter, says that victim status, the victims of IPV, are often used as a poster child for the patriarchy and the damage that is done for women. And stepping into that field is dangerous. And it's very much avoided. And if you do step in that field, you have to tread carefully for ethical reasons. You don't want a victim to be re-victimized from what you're actually saying. So in the end, after going through thousands of different articles, I found 27 studies that could be used for this. You can see all the details here. I don't have to read through it. But the effect sizes that came out of that split into two distinct characteristics. Some that reduced negative effect and those that promoted positive effect. And the negative effects are PTSD, depression, anxiety, isolation, all those things that we would almost expect to find from trauma. But the positive effects showed exactly the same results as those that had gone through other trauma. Increased self-belief, greater resilience, more empathy, better understanding of what was important in life. So although it had been avoided, it was there in black and white. But also, the effect sizes were higher than those people that had been through other trauma. Because if you think about it, if you go into military action, A, you've got training behind you, B, there's an expectation that it's going to happen, and C, there's almost an expectation that you've got buddies, you've got a lot more people around you that have been through a similar circumstance. One of the key characteristics of IPV is that you are isolated. You tend to think you're the only person in the world that's going through this. So you feel very threatened on 24/7 basis, which means that your threat threshold is higher. So therefore, from studies, we know that there's a higher potential of growth. I'm not going to labour this point. We all know the men's experiences of IPV, the stigma that may stop barriers to treatment, the treatment that's out there doesn't really fit the bill. We know that they have similar experiences to women as far as negative physical effects and negative psychological effects. So what can we do about this? This video here, I'd like you to watch. It's about 4 minutes long, and it summarises the experience of men. It's taken from a HBO documentary called Fire Department New York, A Good Job. And Steve Buscemi, who you might know as Mr. Pink in Reservoir Dogs, prior to being an actor, was a firefighter. And when 9/11 hit, he went straight back to his firehouse and went and dug people out of the rubble. He went to help. And 10 years later, he did a documentary. And I would love this to be shown in schools, to be honest, at secondary school. But it shows a history of these men, the trauma that they have been through, from when they started as firefighters, and then all the sort of key events that they've carried with them. And this is a bit of video that comes after 9/11, how they felt about it, and why, well, I'll shut up.
My new best friend was Mr. John Walker. Okay, some people call him Johnny Walker. And he was my companion. I knew intellectually, I knew what I was doing, but I felt I needed a cushion. 343 of the firefighters, 2,750 people, one day, one event. And I couldn't process it.
I felt it was, in a way, like hard to place your grief. It was, I think it would have been, I don't know, if you told me one of those guys died, it would be as hard as all of them. It's like it was hard to comprehend, and all these years later, it's I don't feel like it's completely sunk in. And we lost that many firefighters in one operation.
People say you get better at things. I don't think so. Not that kind of stuff. You know, it's always going to be there. You know.
I don't feel like I struggle per se each day. Like, how am I going to get through the day? Or why am I so angry? Yeah. You know, why am I yelling at the kids? It's just when it happens, I said, oh, you know, I shouldn't have probably yelled like I did. But looking back on it, I attribute it to what we've gone through.
I feel like it's like a hockey game with the plexiglass. I'm on the spectator side of the plexiglass, and my family, friends, and everybody else is on the other side. And I want to, but I can't get on the other side. I can't get on the ice. I can't get into the game. And they can't hear me. The only people that can hear me where it resonates with are the firefighters.
You know, the firefighters are the tough guys, and I'll get through this on my own. And then September 11th hit, and everybody knew that this was something that was going to be way beyond what we had ever had done before.
There was such an overwhelming need for counseling and for reaching out.
We realized that when we were sending counselors there, psychologists, people weren't opening up.
How did you get involved in being, so what is your title, first of all?
Oh, good point. Peer counselor. A buddy of mine called me up after 9/11 and said, listen, the counseling unit's looking for some guys to work in the counseling unit. I said, yeah, I don't know anybody. He said, no, I want you. You don't want me. I don't know anything about that stuff. He said, no, what we're taking senior guys who were there during the war years, and the guys will listen to them.
Firefighters do not openly tell you what's bothering them. You have to pull it out.
So instead of what I call stuffing it, you kind of get it out. You know what I mean? Whether it's yelling, whether it's screaming, you know, whatever it takes.
We learned right after September 11th that unless we had peer counselors, people weren't going to open up to them.
I guess you'd say we're the middleman. We go around to the firehouses and we try to motivate them into tapping into mental health.
I went there the first day, sat down, I said to myself, no, these guys don't know the hurt that I feel, the loss that I feel. And then the first guy starts talking. And I'm saying to myself, he stole my lines. Second guy, very similar. By the time they got to me, it was just more of the same. We all went through it.
One of the things that the FDNY did in rebuilding itself was to understand that there is a tremendous fallout after such an event like that, or even mini 9/11s, which happen every single day, multiple times in the city. There's fires, there's people dying, there's tragedies that firefighters are the people that are holding their hand when they die.
Okay, so what I took from that was that it's not that people don't want to have help, it's not that people don't want to reach out for help, but the help that's put in place doesn't fit what they need. It's not that we have to change masculinity. It's not that we have to change their view of therapy. We need to change the therapy. So I live in the Lake District, as I said. This is my valley. That is my house. I'm going to go through it quick so that you don't find me and stalk me. But what that is a resource. And if I can ask you to keep the messages from that video in your head. This is a view of my head that has male victims firmly in the centre. And I've taken the information from the video of shared experience. Victims need to feel that the therapy is relatable. They're not on their own. It's someone who gets it. It's a band of brothers. Traditional therapies don't really fit their need. We've heard that men prefer active coping therapies. And there's a huge thing about social prescribing, which is why I showed you where I live. Because we've looked at all sorts of therapies like EMDR and getting out in nature, the mental health benefits that come from that. And we've tried to combine them together. So along with Liz and her colleague Julie, we're going to try and do something that has a working title. It's still a little bit fluffy for me, called Walking to Recovery. And we're going to use the Lake District and try and get male victims of domestic abuse together and keep out of it as psychologists. And they're going to be taught how to navigate with a compass, and they're all going to know that they are a band of brothers that don't know each other yet. And we're going to have a treatment that takes them from a small hill and will conclude with scaling Scafell, which is the highest mountain in England. And what we want them to get out of that is an achievement. The rhythmic elements of EMDR, the benefits of nature, but also I think they'll bond with each other as they do it. They're going to achieve something. Now, they may talk to each other, they may not talk to each other, but I think it will give them a sense of belonging to another group. So we're about to trial that once we get through ethics. So if you have anyone that you think would like to go on that, or anyone that you think would benefit from that, or you would like more information, just give us a shout. Thank you.